Hello everyone, welcome again to another 12-minute mark. Here we are finishing chapter 15, the crucifixion, which again is the climax of the gospel. And there's so much that happens here so fast, so quickly. As we finished our last episode, Jesus was on the cross and he gave those last words, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, quoting the first verse of Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? And we noted that the crucifixion was really about being forsaken, that it's not highlighted, the grotesqueness of it isn't highlighted, the cruelty of it is in the shame and the being forsaken by everyone, especially the Father. And so those are the last words and the only words we hear from Jesus at the cross. And so we'll start right around verse 34 and 15, and we'll finish up 15. Now, after he says those words in Aramaic, some standing there said, he's calling Elijah. And someone then ran and filled a sponge with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. Leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah will come and save him. And with a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. And then the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood there with Jesus saw how he had died, he said, surely this man was the Son of God. Some women were watching there from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the Younger, and of Joseph and Salome. In Galilee, these women had followed him. They cared for his needs. Many other women had come up from Jerusalem, were also there. It was the preparation day, the day before the Sabbath. So as evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council, who himself was waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked him for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised to hear that Jesus was already dead. And so when he learned from the centurion that Jesus had died, he gave the body to Joseph. So Joseph bought some linen cloth, took down the body, wrapped it in the linen, and placed it in a tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph saw where he was laid. So that finishes out chapter 15. Again, for those of us who are used to Good Friday and focusing on the crucifixion, this is the central part of our faith. And so there's a deep sense of shock and sadness and distress along with seeing Jesus, who'd lived the perfect life and then dies this gruesome, shameful death on our behalf. Some things here that stand out in Mark. Some people think that he's calling Elijah at the beginning, because in Aramaic, my God and the word for Elijah are almost the exact same pronunciation. So literally, as Jesus is in pain and he's thirsty and he's being tortured, people think he's calling out to Elijah. And they all know that Elijah is supposed to come to usher in the Messianic age. So they also don't believe he's the Messiah, because he's already taught that John was the Elijah to come. And then they offer him the wine vinegar, and he, we know from the other Gospels here, he doesn't take it. In the other Gospels, he says he's thirsty, and people bring that. The wine vinegar is an analgesic. It was used as a drug to numb the body, to help, like you would take a Tylenol today. And Jesus won't have any of it. He doesn't want to be drugged during this time. He's not going to lose being in this reality. He's going to go through it all the way. And then we have this loud cry, and he breathes his last. Just very abrupt. And they crucified him earlier, and he breathed his last. Just a very abrupt, pointed passage. And then the very next thing after he dies, interestingly enough, is this bit about the curtain being torn in two. And, it's ripped from top to bottom. And it's like, that's an interesting thing to say right after the death of Jesus. And so a lot has been made of that over the years. There are two major curtains in the temple, one for the Holy of Holies, and then the outer curtain, which was for the court of the Gentiles. And it's gone back and forth. Was this the ripping open of the Holy of Holies so that now Jesus has direct access to God? It could be. Or is this the outer curtain, the curtain that separates the Gentiles from the Jews? And some have said, well, given the fact that it looks like perhaps this is something that is seen, it would only be seen if it was the outer curtain, and that Jesus in Mark spends so much time opening the way for the Gentiles to get to God. That seems to be such a major theme, that those who are the outsiders, the Gentiles, continue to be those who become insiders with Jesus by faith and are the radical disciples. And so it could be that that's the curtain that's torn in two, that it's a message for those who are, that this is the Gentiles' way to God. And so, but we don't know for certain, but anyway, it has that sense of that God the Father is somewhat shrouded, maybe through the law and through the ignorance of people, and now as Jesus dies, the idea is that a new way has been opened. It's a picture of a doorway, not just a torn curtain. And then the great statement, again, and I've mentioned this from the beginning, that there's the irony, what you think would happen doesn't happen. It's always the kind of the cliffhanger or the shock value of something, and it's the centurion of all people who sees how he dies. It wasn't that he heard a sermon. He notices something, and this particular centurion had probably crucified himself or been witness to hundreds, if not thousands, of crucifixions over his life, and something about Jesus, the way that he dies, tells him that this guy must be the Son of God. And the centurion proclaims that, and here it is. This is the first human being. We've had demons say it, but this is the first human being who has professed Jesus Christ is the Son of God. It comes all the way in chapter 15, and it's spoken by the Roman Gentile, the one who couldn't be more outsider. He could have been the very one who nailed him to the cross, and he's the one that actually makes the first great profession. Now, what faith was with him, don't know, but he's the one that gets it right. He becomes that witness. The high priest in the trial the night before had said, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One? And Jesus said, I am. And then he rips his clothes, and he asks him the question. But the centurion is the first one who proclaims that this is the Son of God. He's the first one that gets it. And this also highlights the fact that we've had this messianic secret throughout Mark. Jesus will do a miracle or healing, and he says, don't tell anyone yet. And now it's time to tell people. Now is the time. You really don't understand the Messiah before the crucifixion. And I believe that Jesus has held this secret from the beginning because the way they were proclaiming him was a way that would never be understood. He would never be understood other than just a magician or a good deed doer. You only understand Messiah and what Messiah means after the crucifixion. And so there's, here there hasn't been any more secret keeping and since he entered Jerusalem and knew that the time was coming for him to die. Then we get a picture of the women who are there. We haven't seen much about these women so far, but they are there. And it says they're the ones who cared for his needs, who took care of him, who perhaps had raised funds and just taken care of daily needs. They're there. They're the nurturers, the caretakers, they're there. And who we don't really see any apostles here. We don't see many of those who had been following him. We just see the women. And then it's the day before the Sabbath. And we have someone who comes on the scene who we haven't seen before, Joseph of Arimathea. It says he is a member of the council, or the Sanhedrin. He is in the ruling class of Jews. It's as high as you get. That's Nicodemus was in the Sanhedrin. Paul, the apostle, before he was converted, was a member of the Sanhedrin. And these are the people who were the high officials, the senior elders of the Jews who had been plotting his death. They're the ones, some of the Pharisees are members of the Sanhedrin, but the Sanhedrin's the decision makers. They're the court, the ones that makes the rules, and they're the ones very much responsible for the death of Jesus. And so it's one of those that comes forward, Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy man who had already purchased, probably for himself, a burial tomb. A nice tomb, and a cut tomb out of rock was something that was for people who had wealth to pay for those and have those dug and maintained. And so he comes, and it says with boldness goes to Pilate and asks for his body. So it's just, he really stands out as this disciple. He goes over and above because he's among those who had him arrested and tried and killed. He has to break all his relationships, his status, perhaps his wealth. He's going to be disowned now, and he goes to Pilate and asks boldly for the body. And he's the one himself, this high status, wealthy, senior official, is the one who physically also takes down the tattered, beaten, crucified body of Jesus. Therefore, and which is also against the law in terms of now he's unclean for the rest of Passover. So it's just it's just that picture of the one who forsakes everything that he is, gives up everything to be the one who actually gives the tomb to Jesus, and he doesn't just do it as a matter of being nice, but he actually is the one who takes the body down and wraps it. And then we end here with Mary knowing where the body is laid. So that sets the stage now for chapter 16. We get to see the resurrection. We'll see you next time then for our last 12-minute mark. God bless you.